T-shirt from them one day and I decided to wear it on the wrong night. I was wearing a jumper which got soaked in the rain, but it said ThoughtWorks at the back. That wasn't very useful either. But I used to work at ThoughtWorks and I used to work at Envato. So I worked at many different companies around Melbourne. And I was kind of like bought into this microservices stuff. Before we get started, I wanted to quickly do a little bit of a sanity check on my audience so I can understand how best to kind of talk about this stuff with you guys. So I want to check with you. How many of you guys work in startups? Can I see a show of hands if you work in a startup? Okay. How many of you work in a company, 50 to 100 people, but internet product, like your core business is a technology product? Show of hands. Okay, cool. And how many of you work in like the Telstra size companies, that sort of company, big, really massive? All right, cool. Okay, cool. So that's the big organization. Okay, that helps. So the journey of microservices at Seek is a really interesting one, and I only came on that journey quite late, only about 6 months ago. But the architect of that journey is actually sitting on the front row here. So if you want to throw stones at someone, there's a man here. Gil was the guy who led a lot of that stuff. Gil is ex-ThoughtWorks and currently Seek, and part of the reason why I'm at the company as well. But the word microservice is very big, right? In an architecture sense, it's so many things. There's so many books on this topic. There's blog posts and speakers, and I think there's a whole conference even around it. And there's a meetup all about it. So it's kind of hard to just talk about microservices in abstract. So what I was going to try and present today was a little bit about how you talk and think about microservices in a company traditionally of the size of 50 to 100, and also for the bigger corporations, right? And I think this helps technologists because very often we make technical decisions and we are trying to talk about an architecture here or a style of architectures, and we have got to take people on that journey with us, not just other technical people, but stakeholders, non-technical stakeholders, and so on and so forth. So what I'm hoping to share with you guys is a bit of when I got into Seek, I had to kind of rationalize where we were on our journey, and I had to find ways to explain that. And then I found a particular way that works sort of well to explain how our world works. And that ability to rationalize my world around me, I realized was a useful communication tool. And I hope it'll be useful for you guys. And so you'll kind of see the case study at Seek through this lens, through this talk, and I hope that might be useful in your conversations about rationalizing your environment and where you could go with that. Right, so that's the style of this talk, if you like. So in order to do that, we kind of need some foundations. You got to kind of agree some axioms. I do speak fast, so give me a signal if I'm speaking too fast. Like do that, that'll work. So yeah, I want to do a few foundations just so that we get. If you don't agree with any of these sentences, that's fine. Hold on to it, but if you suspend your disbelief for the duration of this talk, I think you might get some joy out of it. So Scott Shaw, he's the head of technology, I think, or he was the head of technology at Asia Pac for ThoughtWorks. He had this definition that he would talk about. He says, people want a platform. They want a platform. We need a platform. We need a platform for something. Or you forget about the people bit. Or they say, oh, we need new tech, and they forget the people bit. Or we need new people, but they forget the tech bit. And so he basically said, look, if you have a platform, it's people plus technology. And if you don't have either one of those combinations, you're not getting the best out of it, of this platform. So yeah, that's one of the things I want to kind of, like that's a definition I'm holding through. Sam Newman, author of Microservices book, a former colleague of mine, he has this line. He says, individual autonomy without collective alignment leads to anarchy. We're big fans of Dan Prink, and we're big fans of, in most architectures where you have microservices sprouting out, it's usually aligned roughly with like autonomy and the models of having teams being empowered and autonomous and product teams. But he says, yes, that's great, but without alignment, you have anarchy. So that's another foundation. And this is my own small mention in there. I had to try and give myself some sort of, hey. So I suggest that whenever we talk about software delivery capability, we need capabilities. Yeah, new capability, you're going to invest in a capability. Well, I define it this way. I say it's a function of the alignment of this platform, people plus tech, to whatever the needs of your current product are. And what's really interesting over the last few years is that the needs of the product have started changing very fast. And it's very easy to understand that, and we talk about it a lot. But if you go back to 2008 and you think about it, well, hang on, let's see. So there was 2008, Apple had just announced a phone. Samsung didn't have a phone in the market. Nokia was the worldwide leader. Yeah, Motorola, number 2. BlackBerry was growing in the smartphone phase. You go to 2011, 2012, and Nokia was being bought up by Microsoft. Apple was number 1. Samsung was number 2. Motorola had already been bought, I think, by Google by that point. That was 4 years. And this was a global market space. Nokia was the global leader, not one country, one global leader, and they're dead, right? So, so the product started to change very fast, and that's a really interesting thing. So there's this McKinsey model. It's called the 3 horizons model, right? It's a very management-y speak. People love this. Management people love this. 3 horizons. We've got 3 horizons. Everyone gets very excited. They got a picture and it says McKinsey on it. I put the XKCD slide up there because it talks about, like, they're going to try and simplify a very complex thing into a very simple thing, and that usually means that it's wrong. All models are wrong. Some of them are useful. And so, this I acknowledge that this model is never going to be perfect, but it helps explain the journey of microservices, at least in some sense. So the 3 horizons model, if you've never heard it, has anyone heard of this model, the 3 horizons model? I can see a couple of hands in the front. Okay, so these McKinsey guys, they're really smart cookies. They're management guys. They said that in any business, especially good businesses, around the 50 to 100 kind of web technology, and even the big Telstra-type companies, not so much the startups, you probably have 3 horizons in your business. You got some of your products, some of your technology, some of your systems that are core. These are your cash cows. You built your company around this. It's the thing that makes you who you are. But if you're a smart company, you also have in your same business, at the same point in time, like today itself, you also have some businesses that are emerging. You have emerging products. You have like a new thing that you're banging your bed. You're kind of, that's going to be the thing that's going to get us more money in the future. And that's your horizon too. And that's an emerging product, emerging market. And then you probably have a 3rd horizon, which is like your moonshots, your stuff that you never know is going to work or not. And if you're doing this well, you're managing all these 3 initiatives at the same time. So you'll have some teams and some tech that's in each horizon, right? And so that was true in the case of Seek, at least to my rationalized mind. Like I walked in, I was like, this feels right. This explains the world in front of me. And so it might explain the world to you if you think about your companies or your organizations. It might help explain the different natures of the teams you see in there, at least culturally, at least. And I'll try to elaborate on that a bit. Just before we go away from the model into the applications of the model, I just want to put up a quote from Donna Meadows. You can't really read it from where you're sitting. Sorry about that. But she basically says that what's really interesting about things in the short term, right, is that a lot of things you cannot change. And she gives examples of infrastructure. Like, trees are growing. You can't change the tree. It's grown already. It's there. Materials are in transit. Pollutants work their way into the ground. You can't change a lot. But you can predict a lot. Because the things don't change in the short term, you can have a high degree of predictability. And the opposite is true in the long term. So stuff way out there, thinking about technology and trends and stuff way out in the future, everything can change. You've got no predictability. But everything can change. And that's a really interesting thing. And she says in between is a messy mix of predictability and choice. And this is from Donald Sean about people, and he says, people don't move smoothly from one system to another. So as people, if you consider if you imagine in your head, you've got these different horizons in your company, where some teams are really like different behaviors, and some teams are very different behaviors, again older behaviors or newer behaviors. He says people don't move naturally and smoothly between them. There's a fear of moving across them, and the same is true for architectures. As you move from the monolith to the microservices, it doesn't happen smoothly. There's a fear of the unknown, the fear of letting go. And so he talks about that, but on a systems thinking level. So what helped me rationalize the world we inherited in some ways is that there were 3 horizons. We had one where we were extending and defending our core business. We have a job market. We're extending and defending that. We had emerging businesses. I can't really talk too much about that, but there are emerging businesses in there. And then we had some like moonshots that we were kind of betting the house on as well. Like, I was a little bit outside. And what was interesting, if you think about the platform as being people and technologies, there was a people side to that equation, right? There were very experienced business operators that were the most effective for us in our business at the core. And there were business builders, people who kind of knew how to build a business, build a team, form a team, get people motivated. They were there at the level 2 businesses. And they were the ones who were most effective at it. And there were people in level 3 that were visionaries. Oh, we're going to do this, They're going to have Oculus Rift for jobs, I don't know. But there were visionaries working at that kind of horizon in our company. But the technology side was where it gets interesting, because microservices is about architecture, right? And what we found is that in Horizon 1, you're basically doing transitional architecture. You're basically trying to modernize your core. You probably have a monolith, or you have a legacy system, or you have some service, or big SOA if you were big SOA. But you're trying to modernize this core. Right? That's the way to think about that's what we were finding. The most bang for our buck when we took our core systems and we tried to modernize them. We tried and pull them apart, manage the complexity, manage the scale. Pick technology that helped us do that and pull those pieces apart. Horizon 2 was generally what they call evolutionary architecture. Rebecca Parsons is a CTO, I think, of Thoughtworks. She talks a lot about evolutionary architecture, Neil Ford, etc. But basically, this is where the patterns of your architecture kind of emerge. And microservices tends to be really great here because this is where you can actually start diverging and adding new microservices. Right? You don't try and modernize the old core with all your old systems, but you're kind of building new ones. And that kind of evolves slowly. New stuff turns up all over the place here slowly. And then Horizon tends to be emergent, right? Like you have no idea what's going to work here. We don't even know if this is a good architecture or not. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. It could be anything. Maybe microservices, may not be microservices. And what's really interesting is that I think startups actually play in Horizon 3. So maybe microservices is not a good thing for startups. I ask you to reflect on that. Maybe you don't need to invest in microservices if you're a startup. So Horizon 1 is all about superior execution. Like that's how I talk about it with people. And we talked about this, right? Ascending and defending the core business, experience operators and transitional architectures. And I think it's important to understand the people because I have this weird notion, and this has been my experience in the past, is that architectures are actually about people. And the people talk about Conway's law and so on and so forth, right? But I think that very often the architectures of the systems we build mimic the teams and the personalities in there. And so I think it's important to get your team mix right if you want to do a microservices architecture. What I've seen is in Seek is the places where the microservices architecture and the model of that has stuck has been where the teams exhibited a certain kind of certain kinds of traits, especially in Horizon when you're trying to modernize the core. We found that if you have a track record of working well with legacy code, like you know how to find the seams in a legacy system to strangle it and extract it out, then you work well with trying to move to microservices. You got that skill set, then that this works well for you. This is the happy mix of both personalities and technology, right? You kind of have these attributes. You like working effectively with legacy code. You like the ability to refactor as you go along, and you're very disciplined. It's very hard to be. I'm not a disciplined guy when I write code. I'm not disciplined. I'll stop TDDing every now and then. I don't do the red green as often as I could. I'm not disciplined. I'm not good in transitional architectures. But there are some people who are very disciplined. They're great at doing it, and you kind of need the discipline to do it right. Otherwise, you're just you're not testing and extracting. You're just changing shit. And you need to know how to strangle systems as well. That's very useful. So you kind of need patient, calm, and steady people here. And the architectural systems out here is basically when you talk to people about how this works, what really works with execs and stakeholders is when you talk about microservices, the strangler, and for managing complexity, you need the automated approach, the operations and good support. And I think this is the part that Gil always reminds me that for microservices architectures to be really effective, right? You need to have empowered teams that can do first-line support. That means that they are on call, they carry the pages, they look at their metrics, they care about their customer. They know when something is wrong in the systems before your call center knows about it, if you have a call center. Or before a customer sends you an email and says, hey, what the hell happened? Or before Twitter goes off. Like, they know about it, they've got the alerts, they're already fixing it. And if you don't have that kind of culture, it's not so, it doesn't work quite so well. I like the way of explaining your choice of new technology is really about dealing with problems of scale, like AWS. And one of the problems of scale is that you have a lot of accidental complexity or a lot of side effects. And so Docker containerization, it helps that kind of problem, right? If you talk about Docker, why is it the cool new thing? Why are all the kids going to get Docker? And like, oh, hang on, it helps me manage containerize the blast radius, control the blast radius. You're not going to take down the whole site, and all the money machine's not going to stop, the cache card's not going to stop. And this is Horizon 1 business, right? This is your core business. It's all about risk management at this scale. You talk about Docker as a risk management tool almost, and that's quite, it changes that conversation a little bit. And so yeah, so new tech has a way of decoupling and managing blast radius, and there are lots of tools that can help you do this. Whether it's Puppet and Chef. You talk about these tools as in that context, and you think about applying them in that context. It really makes sense in Horizon 1. A focus on interoperability is really interesting. So what we found at Seek is if we talk about like fixing, like, oh, well, everyone speak HTTP. That's brilliant. Like, all the systems can talk to each other. It's an interoperable. It's a very simple interoperability rule. Everybody talk to SQS. Well, sure, we use Amazon, so we SQS. Yeah, there you go. Easy. Everyone knows how to interop with one another. Everybody speaks StatsD as your metrics protocol. Oh, great. You all can, everyone can share. Everyone push the logs to CloudWatch. Brilliant. Anybody who wants to get logs data from any service, go to CloudWatch. All you need to know is how to get stuff from CloudWatch. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, so this kind of simple interop standards kind of really help the teams kind of work and help everybody kind of interop well between, you've got lots of local services, that helps. So we're not Netflix, we're not Netflix culture. You can't do things at Netflix scale, but these are the things they help. They help us get to that kind of, the kind of benefits we want to see there. And the same is for pattern-based decision making, right? So if you see the same pattern happening across multiple teams, if 4 or 5 teams kind of evolve that way, like, oh, hang on, this is becoming a thing now. All these people seem to think this is a good thing. Let's make this a pattern. Let's tell other teams about this pattern. There we go. Woo. It's a bit like the GitHub stars or Twitter. I never trust myself. I don't trust my opinions. I'm wrong like everybody else, in fact, more often than other people. So I use activities as a way of course correcting. So I often encourage teams to do their own technical radars. So like the company as well, I get them to come up with a list of stuff that they've got in their ecosystem and get them to self-assess whether they are, whether they are on hold or they are trial, they adopt or hold. Has anyone heard of the ThoughtWorks Tech Radar at some point? Yeah, I can see nods. All right, cool. So I get teams to build their own, get companies to build their own, get them to do it all as a group, get them all to vote, get them to see what their peers think they should put on hold and what they should try, and that's really interesting. The effects are quite interesting, and do it on a regular basis because it changes all the time. So you do once every 6 months, do it once a quarter if you can. But that's a really fun thing to do. It helps course correct. I like this model with leadership. It's called the STARS model. It's from a book called The First 90 Days is where I first saw it. But it talks about classifying your businesses as either a startup, a turnaround, accelerated growth, realignment, or sustaining success. And that's really interesting because when you talk about your technology stack and your products in these terms, right? It makes sense when you want to reinvest in it. Oh, you need to turn around this. You've got a legacy system. You've got to turn around. Oh, yeah, it's about turnaround. It's about invest. You've got to change. If it's a cash cow business that needs to be moved towards microservices because it's getting a bit clunky, it's getting a bit monolithic. Oh, it's in a realignment. Move it sideways. So having these conversations in this kind of speak, it really helps control how technology say, oh, you need to do microservices. We need to pull this apart. It helps drive that conversation. This is from Gartner. Hey. They make a lot of money. So they talk about rationalizing your portfolio. Very often you've got a mix of systems, some new, some old, some terrible, some great. And they say, well, talk about it with your product owners in the sense of how aligned is this piece of tech and how important is this product, right? Like how is this product growing? Is this key to our business? Is it aligned to our business? And you can kind of put them in these quadrants and you can see, okay, the ones that are very aligned technically but don't really have a lot of business value, you can tolerate them, that's fine. We leave them as they are, we don't really invest in them. The ones that are low business value and low technical quality, why the hell are they there? Spend effort to get rid of them. You don't want to have anything there. You want to move stuff out of that quadrant. And they really just do the migrate and the invest, right? The stuff that's good, great technical quality, very aligned product model, you want to invest more effort there. So this kind of model helps. And the same for migrate. You can make a case for like, let's get this shit off the physical data centers. Let's move it into the cloud. Or it's a monolith in the cloud. We need to piece it apart. So in Seek, we've had mixed success in terms of evolving these patterns that I talked about, right? So for logging, we've kind of evolved a pattern slowly over time. We find that logging is hard. If you read Sam Newman's book, he talks about logging being something you have to get right, like utility services to make microservices work. So what we found works well for some of our teams is first we start off with a centralized log stack for everything. Everything pushed to one central stack. Yeah, it doesn't work that well. Single point of failure. Not that great. So now we've started moving to a model where everybody pushes their stuff to something like CloudWatch, high available. And then from there, they go to whatever they want. They can either choose to build their own stack, like an elk, and do your own stuff. Or you can go to a SaaS provider. Think Splunk, think Sumo Log, I think it's called. Yeah, you go to your own SaaS. But everyone goes to CloudWatch. And the beauty of having a common thing before is it's interop, yay. Centralized functions like security. If they need this stuff, they can go to CloudWatch and they can slurp stuff from you. It flips the dependency around, which is really interesting now. Before it used to be like, hey, you got to keep security happy. No, hang on. We keep ourselves happy. We allow you to take our logs from this point, go pull it from there into your own thing. But don't talk to us otherwise. And so it kind of flips the dependency model. I have a question. CloudWatch, as in what is CloudWatch itself? It's a logging platform made available to you by AWS. So if you are running, so they're usually equivalents of this in most, in Azure and Google as well. I can't remember the one in Azure. But it's basically like a logging, an open logging. The best part about it is you can fan out. Think of it like, I'm trying to think of a good example for fan out. But basically, exactly, PubSub, spot on, yes. But highly available PubSub as well. And available by default for anything running on AWS. So yes, that has worked well for us. Like all the services push to this one, put their own little thing, and then It keeps it distributed, avoids the centralized points. For metrics, I talked about StatsD, but it's an open protocol and it works well. So we say, okay, everybody wants to manage their own metrics, whether it's the system metrics or whether it's custom app dynamics. We like product teams to own their own metrics, so we can be tracking what their customers are doing. So if you do use a protocol for this, standardize it. Everyone speaks StatsD. It's really great because then you can plug it into whatever systems you want. But if a centralized function like analysts in your company or your product people or your BI people want it, all they need to do is have a system that speaks StatsD. So fix the protocol. That's working quite well. Deployment. Oh, this is fun. So we've been doing several versions of this and we haven't quite agreed. There was this massive Slack fight. You guys use Slack. Slack's eating the world. It's going to win the internet now. But like there's this big debate. Do we do Docker and Docker? Docker beside Docker? Docker and Docker? Docker with a friend called Docker? Docker with Docker's friends? I don't know. It's crazy. Like, no one does regular builds and boxes. No, we do. We do one on the physical data center. All right. So we haven't quite figured that one out yet. The people are in the phase where each team is still evolving and adapting and trying to figure out the best thing. And someone's going to win at some point, and then they'll eat the world. They'll be the new Slack. They'll eat the internet. Secrets. This is the one I like. Everyone who talks about microservices and talks about DevOps, right? They're lying to you. No one solved secrets. It's really hard to do secrets in an automated continuous delivery microservices world. A, because it's hard to do secrets in an automated world. And B, because now when you have microservices, there are 10,000 times more places where you can't do it right. So no one's really solved this. Don't feel bad if you haven't solved it, because we haven't solved it, and I don't know of anyone who has. But there are a few approaches that people have been trying. Some people use encrypted repositories in GitHub, GPG encryption. It's great for managing secrets. Everybody has access to it. You sign up with the keychain. Really hard to revoke. You can't revoke keys. Well, someone's seen it. Oh, too bad. Leases using Vault. That's another approach. If you've ever seen any of HashiCorp stuff, they use etcd as behind the scenes, put Vault on top of it, do leases for secrets. And people are using LastPass as a service, for example. But it's still a human in the loop. But no one's doing this right? So, and we're not doing it right either. And I don't think anyone solved it. So there's a startup idea there somewhere. So that was all Horizon 1. So Horizon 2 is all about taking advantage of new opportunities. We talked about, I talked about building emerging businesses. You need business builders, people who can build a team, form a team, write new software. Greenfield code sometimes it's greenfield code consuming old stuff. Hopefully that old stuff is being extracted into microservices. And evolutionary architectures in here. And again, like if you talk about the kind of attributes of our team that work well in this phase and work well with the architectures that we like in this phase, Conway's law and all of that. So I said Conway's law. Does everybody know Conway's law out here? Yeah, cool. I can see some nodding heads. Conway's law. It's the organizational structure mimics the systems. So this is the kind of attributes that I think work well in. If I see the teams that have been really successful in terms of both rolling out microservices architecture and keeping their product happy and having a great time doing it, having fun with the team, they kind of have these attributes, right? Or at least some elements, or some people in the team have that attributes. And I should clarify that people change over time, right? Like if you're in a Horizon 1 business, you might be a Horizon 1 kind of person. And if you move to a Horizon 2 team, if you're really adaptable, you change to this. And I should highlight that. But there are people who are like evangelists. They have a strong sense of optimism. They are happy working with uncertainty. This one is the point I find interesting. They have to be comfortable trading tech debt for speed. I meet a lot of engineers who are not comfortable trading tech debt. They're like, oh no, you've been burnt by that. Oh, you should have seen that system at Telstra those years ago. I picked Telstra as a joke there, but it could be any big company. People have been burned too many times for having let that tech debt go through. But really, to succeed at this level, you don't know whether your product or the thing you're working on is actually going to be a big thing. It's not a cash cow yet. It's okay to carry some tech debt. If you don't have any tech debt, you're probably over-invested. You're not done enough towards speed. You're not done enough towards getting your shit working and testing it with your product fit and your market fit. So that's really interesting. Knowing when to trade that debt forward for a bit of speed and when to pay it down again immediately after. And having the knowledge of second system effects, you want this horrible, ugly system. Don't reinvent the whole. Don't try to fix every problem that you can imagine you saw. It may not happen here. If you've ever read Fred Brooks, he has a great article on the second system effect. It was a book written in the 70s. It's great. It's a great article. I recommend it. And people who can think faster under delivery pressure. I think that's another kind of element that works well there. But on the technical side, right? I think here's where you start to see the value of microservices. Yes, sir. Yes, I will speak slower. Thank you. I think here's where you start to see the value of microservices. And if you're doing this well, right, like you probably started extracting out services from your Horizon 1 businesses. You probably have things like your customers and your finance systems. And if you're doing this well, you can start reusing the systems to build stuff here better and faster. And that's when this stuff becomes really cool, because you start being able to do this better and faster. And you should be adding back to the ecosystem. Don't try and refactor an old system for this unless you really have to. But here's where you start building on new things. Oh, by the way, now you not only know about the customer, you also know about 10 things they liked on their social network. And the NSA found you. So this is where you start to add on to that ecosystem of core data, right, that you already had, and you build on it. And this is really where you want to start to have fun. And all the stuff that you've been talking about with your execs and your investors and your product teams, this is where it starts to pay dividends, hopefully. You should be talking about consuming your own stuff here. That's the proof that this is working. And we're starting to get there. Keep the focus on interrupt. And again, optimize the code for flexibility, not efficiency. I think a lot of people prematurely try to get the most efficient kind of system out over here. You don't need to. You don't need to have that CDN just yet. You can probably manage without that CDN, because they let you trade off how fast you change your system instead. Like, that kind of stuff. Optimize for your flexibility of your system, rather than for, this is going to be the most efficient way to do this ever possible. Right? Well, maybe not just yet. One thing I see out here is that you can use new attracting talent. So, sometimes the people who work well in this space, they like to use the coolest tech. It's all about JavaScript. No, it's not. It's all about ECMAScript. No, it's not. It's all about Babel. No, it's not. It's actually all about Haskell. No, it's Scala. No, it's Clojure. This is the space where that kind of conversations attracts you the right talent. It's not the right reason to choose a language. It's not going to help you deliver business value faster, but it will help you attract the right kind of mindset. And I think that's something important to understand. And yeah, if you can achieve a shortened time to market, please do. Like if you can use Heroku as a way of getting stuff out in front of your customers faster, yeah, use it. It's a perfectly good use case. That kind of choices, the kind of choices you want to make in this space. We're not very good at that at Seek. We're trying to get better. So here's an exercise that I recommend you can try with teams. At Horizon 2, I generally recommend, it's more team level and less organization kind of activities. There's this one called the fitness function fit. You basically define some axes of things that you think are valuable or important. They tend to be what they call NFRs. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they can be customer-related aspects as well. I do like if they're customer-related aspects. Get the team to plot out where they think they are. Get the averages back. Talk about how you want to change the spider diagrams. Spider diagrams are all the rage. Management types love spider diagrams. Investment types love it even more. So this is a useful exercise to do with teams on a recurring basis. I have a little cartoon on top that talks about iterating. You have to keep doing these. If you do it just once and put it up on a wall and forget about it or refer to it like 6 months later, it's not a good idea. It's going to be wrong. Like I'm guaranteeing it's going to be wrong. Trade-off sliders are a fairly common thing. A lot of teams do trade-off sliders. That works well. Helps keep the focus on the stuff they're trying to do. Tech debt walls. I talked about the kind of people that work in this kind of, oh, we should have really pulled that onto a service. We should have extracted that out. Really? Who else is using it? Oh no, someone's going to love this. I'm like, but you don't have another customer just yet. Just wait for it for a while. Wait till you have your second customer. Right? Being able to be comfortable with that tech debt is really difficult for a lot of engineers. But I found a trick. It turns out if you make that debt visible on a wall, they're much more okay with it. Like, hey, no, I heard you. It's on a wall. It's on a card. Yes, this is bad. You need to go fix this. I heard you the first time. It's on the wall. Don't worry. You're going to get to fix it soon. Don't worry. It's on the wall. That makes everything a lot easier suddenly. And everyone feels much more comfortable. They go, I'm afraid this is being recorded, but I would have made a joke. Well, I'll make the joke anyway. You can actually feel the butt clenches release. What really happens though is if you put stuff on the wall nicely and over time, you rank them versus effort versus pain, the effort to fix it versus the pain it's causing us right now, you eventually get roughly 2 quadrants. The stuff that's got high value and you should probably do, and the stuff that you shouldn't. And that's an easy way to kind of prioritize that kind of work. Some people put everything in that corner. That's fine. Just zoom in the lens. It'll become spread out again. So, but yeah, that's a useful tool. So then the final that leaves us with Horizon 3 kind of businesses. And I hope by now you can kind of sort of relate what I've talked about with your companies. It's definitely true if you're going to Seek, this stuff sort of resonates with some people. They're like, yeah, I get why that team is good. I get why that team is doing their weird stuff. I'm now a lot more okay with this other team doing this other weird stuff. So and maybe this is happening to you guys. I don't know. I hope it's happening to you guys. So Horizon 3 is all about creating new options. It's about business builders. It's really the entrepreneurial people. People often talk about, we have an entrepreneurial spirit. The entrepreneurial spirit is dying. These guys are leaving organization, or these girls are leaving organization. But there's actually a Horizon 3 businesses that are excellent for them. That's why you want to put them. You want to put them there where they can unleash that potential. And you have emergent architecture based on disruptive tech. So in terms of the people things, it's very about entrepreneurial engineers in this space. The Horizon 2 was about product engineers, and Horizon 3 is really about entrepreneurial engineers. So you have to be very self-driven. There's not a lot of structure. No one's going to tell you, well, here's your goals. You kind of have to work them out yourself and feel happy when you hit them. There's very little clarity normally in this business. What are you building today? Oh, I don't know. What did the customer say? All right, build that. So there's not a lot of clarity. Right? How are you supposed to build it? I don't know. You go figure it out. Do I need 3 databases or 1? I don't know. What's your load? I don't know. So there's no clarity in this space. You don't even know what's going to work. And you've got to be really comfortable building quick and dirty solutions. So those prototypes that became a product? Yeah, it's okay. Yeah, that's okay in this world. Like people tell me, oh, we built a prototype and it became a product and we should have refactored them. I'm like, no, you didn't. It became a product. You won. You won the internet there. There you go. So yeah, this is the space where this is okay, right? And it's really hard to have that conversation. So it might be microservices. You could have a microservices product that became a product. It's unlikely. I hope you started with the product first and then went to the microservices. You have to be comfortable throwing stuff away, which is why maybe refactoring too early is not the right solution for you. But you have to be comfortable throwing stuff away. And you do need courage in this space. Like you not only need to be able to learn fast without formal support. You're not going to get to go to a conference about your emergent because no one even knows it exists, right? You're not going to get a conference for this. You're not going to have a coach come and sit with you. Let me show you how this is done, son. So you need a bit of courage to work in this space. I like to talk to companies about the teams that operate in this space and the technical choices they make, right? They really need to operate beyond the bounds of your current organization. If you have a security team, these guys are not hampered by a security team. They are allowed to work without the firewall in front of them. They don't need to have the corporate WAF. They don't need to be part of the corporate ADF, Active Directory system. No, they don't have to deploy onto Windows. They're okay. These guys are allowed to operate beyond the constructs of what's normally what we would normally expect teams to do. That's fine. They have no bug control. That's okay. That's fine. We're okay with them. They want to use GitHub. Oh, what? No, they use a corporate, TFS system. No. They can use GitHub. It's fine. You kind of want to give them the freedom to experiment a little bit with their technical choices. Let them operate beyond the boundaries. When they become successful, we'll tear them down and make them Borg. And really, you want them to be building new technology here as commercially defensible IP. Or at least market defensible position. If not commercial IP, at least market defensible position. The defensible IP might actually be a really good algorithm. It might be a generic algorithm that outdoes the previous statistical algorithm we had. It might be leveraging a new platform. It turns out everyone looks for a job on their Apple Watch. Maybe that's the thing. The new Apple Watch app from Seek. There you go. That's a winner idea right there. And really, you want to optimize. Yeah. Oh, I should not have mentioned that. And really, you want to be optimized for learning in this space, right? You really want to optimize your teams for learning. You want to optimize your tech for that, and that's really hard. So I'm going to say something very controversial. I think it's okay to not have tests if you're a Horizon 3 business, because I think sometimes tests can slow you down. Sometimes tests will actually help you. They help you learn about the tech you're playing with. I think that's really true. You can write a test when you want to learn about something. But maybe you don't need as many tests. You don't need that Selenium test. No, I know you think you do. You don't. Trust me, you don't need that Selenium test ever. Even in the core systems, you don't need it. I know you think you need it, you don't need it. But especially you don't need them here. Write the tests that make sense for you, that help you learn and explore tech, but optimize for being able to change stuff. And I think one expectation you have to set with all stakeholders early on, even your team, is that anything that you build here mandates the need for reinvestment later. You're going to have to go back and rebuild this stuff. You're going to have to. You can't get away from it. There are a few activities that can help. This one is a useful one, horizon scanning. I asked teams to think about the lens of it's a bit like futurespectives, and kind of come up with what are the drivers and trends, and what's the emerging drivers of change, and what are the weak signals of change. You can Google this kind of stuff. It's a quite formal method, this horizon scanning technique. It's quite useful for teams. So the last thing before I wrap up is I want to talk briefly about the emergent organization, because microservices are very much emergent, right? Every now and then you have little bits of services pop up, and new functionality. And I think people and teams kind of follow that, and it's really weird. Like if you have people and teams that are constantly sprouting and organizing around an idea, then you'll have a microservices architecture flow well out of that, very much like Conway's law. And the inverse, I think, is true. If you encourage people to build lots of small services, they tend to form little groups around those ideas, and they start to collaborate, and they're very interconnected. So, I think your architectures, companies are complex. Complex beasts made out of people, and I think complex systems that are made out of people as well. Especially when you get to the 50 to 100 person company and beyond, right? You get this world. There's so many different pieces of your system. And what I find really interesting as I stand at Seek is the behaviors and the trends and the technical choices from Horizon 3 and Horizon 2 start to move into Horizon 1, naturally and organically with time. So if you have a vision for your company in terms of technology or in terms of behaviors and people, if you invest in Horizon 3 and Horizon 2 as a place, usually Horizon 2, over time as some of those bets start to pay off, they start to become the new norm. And that's really interesting. If you had infinite amount of time and infinite amount of resources, as Gil tells me, you would do it across the whole company. Organizational-wide changes, right? And James Ross at Model tells me, if you go and talk to the agile coaches that Telstra, you ask them, what are you guys doing? Like, we're doing agile transformation. We're rolling out agile across the company. They were doing that 10 years ago. They're still doing it now. So big organizational transformation is one way of doing it. But if you had to pick a place to invest, I would suggest pick your Horizon 2 businesses because there's a natural organic flow of that into your Horizon 1. It's a bit tricky. If you don't invest at all in your Horizon 1, then you won't have those founding blocks, those building services that you actually make your Horizon 2 more effective. But there's a trend there that it helps to be aware of. So that's that. And the last thing I wanted to put up was from this book called Connected Company. It's a really great book. It's a great book about technical strategy, right? And I encourage people who are trying to introduce change, or trying to do disruptive architectures like a Microservices. It's disruptive. It's not the normal. It's not big SOA. It's not big monolith. It's not big SAP system, big COT system. It's not that, right? It's disruptive in its own way. I encourage them to read that book, and I like this slide because it says that there's a view that as companies grow, productivity drops, but the opposite is true of cities. Economic productivity or economic output of a city actually improves as the city gets bigger. And the author of the book, he says that he thinks that's because of the nature of the way management and leadership works in a company. And he says that in a company you try and control all the activities, and if you don't try and control all the activities, but in a city you don't try and control them, right? Like you don't try and control how someone buys a tomato. You let them buy a tomato, but you focus on building a road so that the truck with the tomatoes gets to the store faster, right? And that's really interesting. The nature of what we try and optimize or what we try and build is different, and I think that's true about the architectural systems as well. You don't try and control each transaction. Try and control how data flows across all your systems better instead. Let each system do its own thing. It's okay if that one system is written in Node, one system is written in Go. It's okay if one doesn't have tests. It's okay if one does have tests. That's fine. As long as they have ways of, the roads between them are nice and clear and the tomatoes are moving fast down the pipeline. The analogy falls down after a while. But I think you get my drift, right? Like there's a difference in the company here. It's not just the technology and the people. It's also the management styles around it. And I think you have to be willing and open to accept it. And that's also very hard. Like if you try and do just the technology change without having to change the people and the teams, and the platform and the leadership of the platform, you're really fighting a hard battle. So and this has been true at Seek, and this is really interesting. It's like we're finding that we're all having to adapt our leadership styles. Apparently, I'm a manager. I got teams to manage. I got to adapt my style. I got to move tomatoes. That's what I took out of that. So there's a thing called the complex adaptive system. I'm not going to go into detail. I encourage you to read up about it. There's a whole body of knowledge in this space. I'm just a beginner on that journey of understanding how complex adaptive systems work. It's part of systems thinking, but I do recommend you read about it. It's quite interesting. I think microservices, by the very definition, if you look at the Netflix architecture diagram, it feels like a complex adaptive system. The internet is a complex adaptive system of so many things talking to each other. DNS is a complex adaptive system. Google Analytics. No, Google Analytics is not a complex adaptive system. It's just complex. So thank you very much. I hope that was useful, and I'm happy to answer questions. Stunned silence or boredom, I'm not sure which.
So I think you might have answered this at various different levels throughout your talk, but I'm interested in the notion of, so earlier you made the point that individual autonomy without that sort of collective autonomy leads to chaos. So like smaller scale innovation, so obviously you want some level of innovation and experimentation in teams, but having too much, having different teams going in too many different directions probably won't lead to a sort of collective shared outcome. So how do you sort of control the level of innovation or investment in innovation that's going on?
Okay, let me see if I can replay the question back correctly. So Given if you agree with the statement that individual autonomy without alignment leads to anarchy, and if you've got lots of teams doing lots of different things, how do you control the level of innovation that's happening across the company? Is that correct? Or how do you control the level of investment?
Just at a smaller scale, like at collaborative team level.
So within a team, for example?
Or probably across teams. Have you got like the Spotify like tribe model or something like that? Or?
No, but I probably should get it. It'll make this conversation easy. So generally, as a rough guide, I'm a big fan of the cities and companies. I don't try and control the rate of innovation. I don't think it's useful. I think trying to do that is like pushing water uphill. It's not a good idea. Because if you've got great smart people and you've got really intelligent people and they want to innovate stuff, if you try and control them, they're going to resist. They're not going to enjoy it. They'll be happy if they innovate. So the better thing is as the saying, if you agree with Sam Newman, who I know you know, is to align their goals with their innovation. Hey, you want to innovate? That's great. Instead of trying to innovate with the language of implementation, why don't you innovate with how you get the customer's money to us faster? Do you know what I mean? You try and find ways to apply where the innovative energy is going towards a common goal. And big exec types will talk about their vision and the company year plan and the strategy for the map, and then each divisional leader will talk about their division and their strategy for the map. And that's one way of aligning the goal. But the other way is just to convince people that this is a really good idea. Hey, you know what? If the database never goes down, we make more money. Yes, keep the database up. Do you know what I mean? So I don't recommend controlling innovation. I do like to focus it differently depending on which horizon you are at, though. Like the way you steer people's innovations and their efforts at Horizon 1 is different from Horizon 2, is different from Horizon 3. Horizon 1 is really, like I said, I think it should be about modernizing the core. You get the most value and the most bang for your buck if you're building things that are going to help your Horizon 2 businesses. Whereas very often people in Horizon 1 think only about operational efficiency. Operational efficiency is a good thing. Managing that complexity and that scale is also a good thing at Horizon 1. But you can't lose sight of the fact that you really need to be building stuff for Horizon 2 as well. Because at some point in time, this is going to be dead. This business that you're in is going to die. So you can have the best possible platform for that. It's useless if your customers have buy it and in the meantime have been moving somewhere else. All right, so
like I guess earlier you gave the example that the team standardized on like a logging protocol.
sure, yeah, you can pick.
So at some point before that, there must have been different approaches going on.
Like our deployments right now.
I can kind of speak to that. So there's one thing when you're in an organisation where you're trying to stimulate people to think differently, to be more autonomous and act their own thinking rather than following. You first have to unshackle, them to allow them to go out, and that's kind of what we did when we went in there. Is we let the teams just start doing stuff, and you get a lot of stuff that works. You get a lot of stuff that doesn't work, and it's not very efficient. But when they start then talking to each other and they start sharing information about what works, what didn't work, then you start getting, I always call it the nuggets that drop out, gold nuggets, right, that drop out of those conversations that then become the quasi-standard, right? And I think it's important, I don't think, maybe you don't, but I think it's really important that you don't then set that as a standard. This is kind of how we do this, but if you can find a better way to do it, or this doesn't work for you, go for your life. However, we've done this before in the organisation, and this is how a lot of people are doing this, the preferred way of doing it, and there's alignment around that, right? But it's not set in stone as a standard, because otherwise you start innovation again.
It's kind of why I named this patterns, right? Like I talked about it as being patterns, not as being standards that are emerging. And one way to look at it, there's a standard for logging emerging in the organization. But like I agree with Gil. I think if you termed it as standards, actually it has negative connotations. But if you call it a pattern, people understand the concept of software design patterns is not being something you blanket apply, right? No one blanketly applies all design patterns in one code base, right? But I think that's the thing. People understand that you apply the pattern where it makes sense and to the degree it makes sense, and you have the freedom to extend the pattern a bit as well. And the really interesting thing is if you look at these three, I know they're not in any particular order as such, but the logging stuff that we did, we had teams that did logging in different ways across that. Some people use Fluentd, piping off log stash. Some people do sidecar containers with other things, with FileBeat, and there's a variety of options in there. There's a database. Some people log to the database. Some of the old systems. There was a variety, right? And then slowly now there's a pattern. Oh, hang on, we're solving the same problem. This is really working. This is easy to do. Someone built the template for it already, so you don't have to do it yourself. And it slowly started rolling out. And so that one's probably the most advanced in terms of its adoption. Metrics is still kind of going through that evolution. And we can't agree on deployment. You should see the debates about Docker and Docker versus don't use Docker. Like, there's lots of those debates. And there's all these blog posts flying around because that's the way, software communities think. They keep posting each other's blog posts and Twitter feeds. And like, that's clearly the right way to go. No, read a book. No, the blog post. Oh, okay.
And that's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
And it's what teams are comfortable with, right? So one team might be more comfortable with a Docker and Docker approach versus a Docker versus no Docker. That's fine.
Well, at least for us. I can't speak for your own. Maybe in your organization, this will be important that everybody has exactly the same model. Like, I wish you luck with that. And I don't think developer types and engineering types generally like that approach. But I wish you luck with that approach if that is, for us, this works.
And it's because we're not in a very controlled environment, are we?
Yes, no one controls us.
No, but I mean, we don't have. We don't have any regulatory controls around.
Yes, that's true.
That we have to follow, so we're in a fairly,
that we know of. But yeah, we are unencumbered by regulatory processes as well, which is quite nice. Like very different from when I used to work in telcos, for example. Yes, sir. Well, I acknowledge that. I'm sorry, my bad.
Anyway, when you're talking, I noticed you mentioned a couple of technologies like AWS specifically.
Yeah.
And I also hear from other labs talking about cloud search, AWS specific systems like.
Yeah.
Back in the days, this is exactly what IBM, Microsoft, and other companies were doing, giving a full complete suite. And people came and said, oh, don't use proprietary systems.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to migrate, blah, 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 things. And things got changed. Now, many people move to open source world. Since the cloud came into the picture and these tools are all, I'm seeing this is a proprietary tool, for example,
Sure.
or cloud search or anything.
Yeah.
Something is proprietary because when a cloud company gives something, doesn't mean that it's open source. If I decided to move from that particular one to Google, for some reason Google started to give a cheaper
Sure.
cloud pricing. If I decided to move, it's going to be very hard. It's the same argument which we had 10 years back.
Yes.
So that's proprietary. I kind of feel like we are going back again with the same approach, like the proprietary one, because it's making life easier. That's exactly how I used to sell it.
Yeah. I think your question is around vendor lock-in, right? You're basically talking about vendor lock-in, and there's this thing about, hey, if you use all these texts from AWS, let's say as an example, as our villain in this conversation, you get vendor lock-in. And this is a really interesting thing because for years in my career, right, I fought hard against vendor lock-in. Like I thought, oh, vendor lock-in is bad. And then someone asked me, so when have you ever needed to change vendors? And the answer was never. I've never changed vendors in any of my systems ever. We either just rebuilt it entirely on a new way, or the system had evolved beyond it. So the first thing is, in my experience, we never actually utilized the option that not having vendor lock-in gave me in the past. And there's another interesting thing that I've realized. Like someone talked to me about, oh, we should use Postgres instead of using Oracle. But Postgres is just another vendor. Yeah, it's open source, and I love Postgres. It's one of my favorite databases of choice. But it's just another vendor. It's another system. And you're going to couple yourself to some systems. The best thing you can do to isolate yourself is you pick your interop standards, right? Everybody speak HTTP. Great. And sometimes the other end of that HTTP interop standard is going to be a proprietary one, right? And so, yes, in a perfect world, you would try and avoid that vendor lock-in. But in any day, I generally trade off getting working software that provides useful value to somebody, to your customers, to your teams, over vendor lock-in. It's very low on my list of architectural things that I prioritize. I'm happy to have some degree of vendor lock-in. I'm biased. I like AWS vendor lock-in better than Azure vendor lock-in. Why? I don't know. I grew up that way, I guess. Don't like Microsoft. I have inherent distrust in them. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. So yes, I do have personal choices as to what I like, but if you're to bring it down to a principles level, I will choose vendor lock-in where it gives me some benefit. Right? If I put my stuff onto S3, it means I never have to think about it. It just works. Great. I'm happy to wear that kind of vendor lock-in at some point. And really, I think the nice thing about things like microservices is you're actually spreading the point at which you have the vendor lock-in across lots of small pieces. So if you ever did want to cut, do something else, you pick one service and you move that one service to Google Cloud Engine. Right? So the nice thing about these architectural models, these distributed small architectural models, you can actually choose to manage your vendor lock-in risk at a different level. Right? You can choose to move a couple of services to the right kind of solution. It also lets you to pick the right tool for the problem at hand. Everyone talks about pick the right tool for the problem at hand. Well, this helps. You can build another service that uses Google Cloud Engine and another service that uses AWS. I would like to add one last caution though. Organizations have finite amount of ability to do different things. They have a finite amount. Your headspace is only so big. You can only keep so many things in your head at one time. And for something as big as the cloud stack and all the crazy emerging technologies in there, and for something like JavaScript with all its crazy libraries, and for something like Docker which keeps exploding, right? If you add so many of those things into someone's mental headspace, they can't keep pace. And you'll start to have lossy organizational knowledge. It just starts to lose. You can't keep pace with it. So I would say pick one, suffer the pains of a little bit of vendor lock and move to it, get the benefits of it, and then once you've hit that maturity where you're there and you've kind of absorbed it and it's kind of stabilized, then look at, okay, now hang on, we're a little bit too coupled here. Let's see if we can introduce a few points where we're not so coupled. When it starts to hurt you, remember the deck with the pain walls and effort versus pain? When it starts to hurt you, that's when you start to look at actually introducing a little bit of decoupling.
So vendor lock-in used to be like, I say vendor lock-in is not just about technology. The reason behind vendor lock-in and we cried earlier is because we are not able to find people for that proprietary tools, like ESP tools. And if you take this proprietary tools, Amazon CloudWatch, and they all use Amazon SDK, their own SDKs, not a open one. So that's what I asked this question. So again, it's going back to the same narrow SDK, which is not really available anywhere to go and learn it. That was the actual bottom line of the problem earlier.
Yeah, well, and that's still a problem even today, you're right. But generally what we find is we try and pick tools that don't have that problem, that don't have locked-in, like that are open for you to use. Like even in the cloud platforms, like if you're using RDS, for example, for MySQL, it's still regular MySQL or Maria. It's still Postgres in RDS. So like sometimes you can get away with it. Like I said, it's a trade-off right around the skill sets. I think Gil has a
So we had those debates when we were looking at AWS, and then there was some people going, we should be looking at Azure, and maybe we should be building abstraction layers to sort of, to hide ourselves or to decouple ourselves from the actual implementation. But then it's like, well, now you've got to manage another layer of complexity as well, and you're reducing yourself to a least common denominator too, so you can't necessarily use all of the features. So that's one thing. The other thing is that the services that we tend to use, we don't tend to use very specific services that do very specific things. We use SQS as their queues. Queues are fairly transportable to other providers. Yeah, you'll have to change the code to hook that in, and there might be some slight feature differences. S3, it's just a file store really, right? It's a file store which happens to be really highly available, and you get events coming off it, and you build some stuff around that as well. So that's kind of what I say. I say, yes, we are doing that. We are tying ourselves specifically to AWS services, but they're not things that are really hard to change. Right? So you're using, and that's what we do, is we use the services in AWS that are very, very implementations of basic constructs.
commodity stuff, right? Like you don't really want to build your own file storage. And it speaks REST, it speaks gets and posts. Okay, I can sort of see that. I don't like the layers of abstraction, I really don't. I think it's a waste. Like your customers don't care how many layers of abstraction you have. None of your customers care about your vendor lock-in. They really don't. They just care about getting whatever it is they're buying from you. So, yeah, and it probably still is. Like for some companies, it probably still is. At least for us, and at least where my kind of thinking has evolved to so far, I think I started off with thinking that this was important, and I've now sort of over time lost respect for that as much. It's still there. Like if I had to go down my list of things, at some point I'll hit that and I'll be like, oh, okay, I choose between two guys that were equal so far. One has vendor lock-in. Okay, I'll pick the open one. But it's much less of a concern for me nowadays. Like I see, I got bigger problems. Yes, keep the site up all the time when 20 different things are going on. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I'm asking this question as an engineer, so that's the role that you must have.
Sure.
If you find yourself in a company that's going to build a new product, like Horizon 3, they're kind of treating it as a Horizon 1 or let's say Horizon 2 project.
Yes.
They want to standardize lots of things.
Right.
No variety, no autonomy, people, all very minimal. And then they want this kind of big bang. We built it. We are like
Yep.
cool feature.
Yeah, yeah.
Product, and then the big bang show at the conference. And
Yep.
customers, how would you behave or react to tackling that kind of one?
It's a good question. Like, and it's a hard place to be. I have sympathy because I've seen this, and you're right. It's a hard place to be. It's really interesting because they're choosing to operationalize too early in their product life cycle, right? They're at the point where they should be counting the opportunity cost of spending money operationalizing and making something more efficient versus innovating and trying different things. And it's really hard because you're not considered to be an expert in that conversation. You're considered to be an expert in building software. What are you doing talking to me about this? It'd be like me telling you how to write code. What are you telling me how to build a product? Like, how are you telling me how to build a business? You write code. And so yeah, it's hard. It's one of those things where it's the same way how we would react if they told us how to write code, right? But the only ways I found works well, I used to work in a Horizon 3 business within a company that had all 3 horizons. And the only way to do it is to actually have conversations about the product curve, where you are in the product's life cycle. Talk about the operational, like if you are investing in this, if you are operationalizing your business, what you're doing here is you're investing in operationalization, right? You're investing in making this thing successful, a cash cow business. Are you sure it's a cash cow business? Are you aware of the opportunity cost? People talk about ROI. It's actually not ROI. It's NPV. In that Horizon 3 business, you want to talk about net present value, which is ROI plus opportunity cost taken into account. And that's the best way to have that conversation, really, at that level. There are different ways, I guess you can, it's a really hard place. I know it's a really hard place. And I don't have some great solutions for you, sadly. But like, the only thing I can do is that I can point out, like, hang on, like if you do this, you're losing the chance to do this other thing. And sometimes you may have to like suggest something. Maybe point to something on their roadmap and say, look, we could spend all this time making your call center administration function more effective, or admin. People want to build roles and permissions all the time in systems. I don't know why. No customer says, I want roles and permissions. That's the one thing that I will make your software. No one uses that stuff. But they all want to build it, and they all think they must need it in order to compete. And one of the most interesting conversations I had was when someone turned around and said, actually, hang on a second. If we try and compete with our competitors straight on feature for feature, we're going to lose because they have a head start and they've got more stuff already. So let's compete from a different angle. Let's try and approach the same solution from a different angle. And I think when the conversation finally changes to that sort of thing, then you have a solution. Maybe you have a better path. But it's not an easy place, But I do recognize that, like, these people, whoever they are, either they are in that position because they've built businesses before, or because maybe they know what they're doing. And so there's an element of, hang on, I know about technology, you know about companies. I'm not going to tell you how to run a company. But so, I mean, there has to be a little bit of the mutual respect. But I know what you're saying, because sometimes you can just feel it. You're like, oh, what are you doing? Why do you want to build a roles and permission system? What we need is webhooks, man. We need webhooks. More webhooks for more things. Connect to Trello or Slack. I know what you mean, though. Like, I wish there was an easy answer. Yeah. I start with a conversation about the horizons. Like, it only works if people have a shared mental model with you, right? Like, if people, first of all, like, now I use the horizons to have a chat with you guys. Like, you guys kind of sense how my head thinks about stuff. I would start with that conversation first. Does everybody in that room, the decision makers, the leaders, do they have a shared mental model of this stuff? Are we all on the same page? Do we all see it as 3 horizons? And if we can agree on a model, it doesn't have to be 3 horizons. There are like a million of these models, right? Like, you can pick one. But if we agree on a model between us, then we have a foundation to then start talking about, okay, where are the gaps? And so things like that STARS model I talked about, where you classify certain products as startup, turnaround, those are different techniques of coming up with a model to first agree with the thought leaders or the people who can influence that change, right? And then once you have that agreement, then you can talk about, okay, now let's zero in on this one. What should we do here? So I start by first getting that agreement. That itself takes a long time. But then from there you can actually influence change. And the one thing you have to realize, and a mentor of mine made me realize, is that sometimes you may discover once you've done all this that the actual problem that you need to solve is beyond your sphere of influence, and you have to be okay with that. And if you're not okay with it, then maybe you need to find something else to do. But if you may find that when you go through this exercise with people that the actual problem is outside of your sphere of influence. You can't influence it, and you've got to decide whether you're okay with that or not. So It has nothing to do with microservices, perhaps, but that's what I found personally.
Okay, I think
Thank you very much.